Hello, good morning, happy Saturday. Welcome to Overpriced JPEGs. I am Carly Riley. You know I like to get right into these shows, but I do want to acknowledge that my background today, if you are watching on YouTube, is a little different. I'm in a hotel, so I apologize for the crappy quality. Though, to be fair, my video quality in general leaves something to be desired. I know, I hear you all. I promise I will work on it. I am working on it. I want to make this better. But, you know, it takes time. Things take time. So today's show, I'm super excited about. We're talking about, of course, general stats updates, what's happening with different projects across the NFT space over the past week. I'm going to talk about Lazy Lions. If you're like, what is this project that always DMs me? We're going to talk more about it. We're talking about the big news this week, honestly, to me, or the big thing that I want to get into is the, let's call it Opensea scandal. I don't know. Opensea claiming they might do an IPO. I want to talk about that and the reaction to that. My reaction to my interview with Marcus Blache, again, can't pronounce his last name, from the Sandbox, and gonna be a great day.
ZERION is the perfect place to view the entirety of your crypto portfolio all in one spot. Not only does ZERION aggregate all the tokens across all of your wallets, but it also displays the NFTs that you've been tirelessly collecting. ZERION even reports the value of your NFTs in your overall portfolio, giving you the most comprehensive report on the entirety of your crypto portfolio. And now, ZERION is going cross-chain. ZERION's comprehensive tracking and trading support also extends now to Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, and Binance Smart Chain to deliver a complete illustration of all of your assets across all of the chains that you use. ZERION isn't just a place to get an understanding of your portfolio, but it also hooks into DeFi activities like trading, borrowing, and lending, all in one convenient place. So you don't have to memorize all the various DeFi websites to do all of your DeFi activities. To get started, go to zerion.io/bankless and load up your wallet or wallets into the ZERION interface and supercharge your DeFi experience and enrich your NFT lifestyle. That's ZERION/bankless.
I want to give a special thanks to overpriced JPEG partner BlockBlock, not only because they are a sponsor of this show, but also because they are my employer. BlockBlock is an innovative blockchain lab. We work across NFTs and the metaverse, and our goal is really to push the industry forward with every new project we take on. We founded and currently run the METAVERSE, which just partnered with Larva Labs to create more metaverse-friendly renderings of Meebits, which is awesome. We are also partnered with a Sundance Award-winning filmmaker to build the first DAO that will own a feature-length documentary film. We have a ton of cool projects down the pipeline and are really looking for cool people to partner with on this. So go to blockblock.io to subscribe to our newsletter and be kept up to date about what we have going on, and also to check out open roles we have available. Would love to have you apply, come work with me, coming out, blockblock.io.
Okay, diving in. So stats updates. Wanted to talk about the Ross Ulbricht NFT. I mentioned it last week that it was going on sale. Well, we now have the results. The Ross Ulbricht NFT went for over 1,000 ETH. It sold for $6.2 million. Holy hell. Good for Ross. Really fascinating, honestly. I expected this to do well. I don't think I expected it. In fact, I did not expect it to do that well. As a reminder, the proceeds from this sale will go to a foundation that is dedicated to helping free Ross. It also goes to support Giving for Art, which is a nonprofit set up by Ross and his mom to support families of the incarcerated. I also found out there's another detail to this that I learned, which is that contributors, anybody who bids on this Genesis collection, receives Ross tokens in return. And those Ross tokens allows you to like vote on proposals and contribute broadly to this FreeRossDAO that is being set up. So there is a governance component to all of this that's worth knowing about. Okay, other news, there is a sweeper, a floor sweeper going on. I don't know, that's probably not the right way to say that, but there is a wallet that seems to be sweeping floors. They swept the Bored Ape floor, they swept the World of Women floor, and Zeneca33, who y'all know I love, has said that they think that same wallet has now swept the Loot floor. So those projects all saw bumps this week, really mainly due to one primary wallet. The other project that did very well, at least over one particular 24-hour period here, was Lazy Lions. They bumped like 50%, I think, Wednesday to Thursday. They seem to have bumped on the basis of Coinbase news. Coinbase announced that Lazy Lions would be listed as part of the Coinbase platform, and that seemed to be the real precipitating event for this huge jump. It still is interesting to me that the Coinbase news would do that. We've had plenty of other projects get announced on Coinbase, and it hasn't always had that same effect. Okay, Lazy Lions. I feel like Lazy Lions is like the project we all love to hate. Initially, I thought maybe this was just me. I think of Lazy Lions in sort of an eye-rolly way because they just shill for their project so hard. They're always, I think it's calmed down a little bit, but for a while there, it felt like, every day you were getting DMs about joining their Discord. They're very loud on Twitter, and the project itself felt a little bit derivative. Not even a little bit. It felt quite derivative from the standpoint that actually the founders have said they really admired Bored Apes. It came out not too long after Bored Apes. It came out this summer, and it's like follows the same general formula, right? It's like an animal cartoon with an adjective before it. Bored Apes, Lazy Lions, right? It's sort of in the name. And the art was even kind of similar in this, giving a personality to a animal. And looking at their roadmap, it feels very standard. It's like at 20%, if not even standard, it feels like vaguer than standard. I want to read a couple moments here. I'm focusing on some of the negatives right now, but I am going to have to, I don't know, maybe eat humble pie if that's not too lame of an expression. The roadmap for the project, it says, once 20% of the project sells out, the community wallet, they'll establish this community wallet, which will be used for a variety of things for ensuring longevity. I've said before, I actually like vague roadmaps. Zeneca has said that. So it feels hypocritical for me to say I don't like this phrasing because it's too vague, but there is just something about it'll be used for a variety of things for ensuring longevity that just feels, I don't know, kind of lame to me. But with all of these negatives said, and I learned that I'm not the only one who has this impression. Like I reached out to a number of my friends just being like, hey, what are your like Lazy Lions? What's your first reaction? And like across the board, it was like, they shill too much or like, feels kind of lame. So I apologize, Lazy Lion holders, please don't come for me. What I'm about to say is that, so with all of that said, with that being, I think, a common impression of Lazy Lions, the project is doing quite well. It broke a 1 ETH floor today. I think its all-time high was over 3 ETH back when things were really crazy. I don't like to overfocus on floor prices. I think, time will tell what projects really have long-term staying power. But this project has a real community. I've now spent time in their Discord. They're definitely there. They have over 4,000 individual NFT holders, which is big. And the big piece that I've really learned about as I started to dig into this project just to kind of understand it better and deeper than just my kind of eye roll initial impression of them is they have this Roar Rewards program, which I actually think is what feeds the shilling potentially. So this Roar Rewards program is somewhat interesting. It's on their roadmap as once the project hit 40% sold or whatever. It says Lazy Lion holders are eligible to participate in a program that rewards community engagement. And essentially, you as a Lazy Lion holder, you have to set your profile picture to your Lazy Lion. You have to put like a lion emoji in your name. You have to set your Twitter banner to something. I don't know. There's like 4 things, all social media related, that you have to do. Once you do that, you connect your wallet to this like part of the Lazy Lion site, and you'll literally get ETH back. You get rewards for doing these things. I don't have a Lazy Lion. I couldn't connect to their site and see like what else there was to this. So I don't know if they also connect this ever to like, go spam people on Discord, essentially go spam people on Twitter. If you do that, you'll get more rewards. I wouldn't be shocked if that was a piece of this, but I don't know for sure. I couldn't really get clarity on that. I do think this is interesting. It feels like an interesting way around the securities problem that a lot of these NFTs face, which they can't come out and say that they're going to reward you or pay you, because then you're getting real close to that securities violation line. In this case, it seems like, hey, buying a Lazy Lion gets you access to this membership club. And once you're in this membership club, if you do other stuff, we'll pay you for that other stuff. I don't know if this is sustainable. I don't know how long a project can sustain itself on paying its people to shill for more users. Again, that's where you sort of get into this multi-level marketing territory that I talk about quite a lot with these projects, where it feels like the entire project is propped up by people going to shill for the project to get more people in to shill for the project. Lazy Lions, in their roadmap, their end goal, they say, is a play-to-earn game. So that is really the test, and that is really the question. Will this project succeed in making a game and therefore transitioning from just being a, multi-level marketing scheme to something with real end utility, assuming that the play-to-earn game itself is able to have sort of end utility and isn't itself just a matter of getting more money in the door, but is actually something that people enjoy and want to play. That is the question. So many projects promise a game. That is like the premise of a lot of projects these days, and not all of them will be able to deliver. I listened to an interview, or part of an interview, with one of the founders of Lazy Lions. He seemed like a smart kid. I don't know how old he is. I'm not trying to be dismissive. He seemed sharp. They maybe have a chance. They have a really diehard community. So if you haven't looked into Lazy Lions before, because you, like me, sort of rolled your eyes anytime you heard about them, might be worth looking into. I'm by no means saying go buy a Lazy Lion. Like I said, I don't own one. This is, do your own research, not financial advice, all of the disclaimers. But I do give them more credit than I think I previously had after now digging a little deeper into what they're doing. The rewards program thing is interesting and actually feels somewhat unique in terms of its execution. Okay. The bad news this week, or the project, there were several projects that were down this week, but I wanted to just flag that WolfGame, the new WolfGame Migrated assets were down pretty significantly, like 33% at one point over the week. I think we talked about this last week. I don't want to belabor the point, but WolfGame, they had this sort of big exploitation in their original smart contract. So they've migrated the whole game onto a second smart contract, a new one. They're paying bounties out to anybody who tries to find exploits for that new smart contracts. You're doing the kind of auditing thing within the community. And they have this new game. It's called the Risky Game, where basically any wool you held as part of your assets in the last smart contract in the original version of the game, you now have the opportunity to get all of that wool back via a wool pouch, but you get to kind of gamble on it. You can either take the wool pouch and get all of the wool you were initially entitled to, or you can take a gamble and you can either get and you can opt into basically taking a chance that you might get a wool pouch with a lot more than you were going to get, or a wool pouch with like nothing or something. So again, this whole game is very gamble-y in a fun way. I mean that actually as a positive. I think that's what's fun about this game. But apparently the community is, I don't know, losing faith feels like an overstatement, but the project did take a bit of a hit this week. So it's definitely fallen from that original hype. There's some speculation that like gas prices have to do with that, right? It's just expensive to play this game at this point. That was brought up in an episode of Proof, the Kevin Rose podcast. They talked about WolfGame, and they flagged as part of that, hey, you can actually go play something called the Sheep Game, which is on Avalanche, where gas fees are much, much lower. And so there's a much lower barrier to entry cost to shearing your sheep, etc. But it's the exact same game. This was something they talked about like a week ago on the Proof podcast. So a week is forever time in this world. I don't even know what is happening with the Avalanche game 7 days later. But if you have been wanting to try your hand at the Wolf game and felt like it was too expensive on the Ethereum side, might be worth looking into the Avalanche side of this. Like I said, I will be tracking this game closely. I think it's a really interesting case study in what will happen with play to earn, and like the potential for a Farmville type game in Web3, a game that many don't think is a game, many think is actually quite boring, but somehow gets like a strong following. Okay, don't want to belabor the WolfGame thing. I know I talk about it a lot. The big story today, what I really want to talk about is this Opensea scandal. If you have not been following this, and scandal is probably a strong word, but if you've not been following this, Opensea appointed a new CFO, Brian Roberts. He was the CFO of Lyft, the ride-sharing app, previously. He has now come on to Opensea, and he, in an interview with Bloomberg, as part of his press tour for taking this new role, he said, when you have a company growing as fast as this one, you'd be foolish not to think about it going public. So he clearly indicated that he's maybe working on and thinking about Opensea going public. And the community response to this was swift and fierce and angry, because there was a feeling that, oh, you're thinking about going public, but you haven't made any comments or indication that you're going to reward the community that has been using your platform for the last number of years via a token drop, like what ENS did, for example, earlier this year with a lot of success. So this backlash, I'm going to be honest, and this is probably not a popular opinion, but this backlash triggered me a little bit, in the sense that I was somewhat skeptical of all of the ENS hype at the time. And so when I saw all these people being like, you need to do what ENS did, I was a little bit like, it almost pushed me on the side of Brian Roberts and the IPO. Not actually, but let me explain this. So, earlier this year, the Ethereum name service, ENS, did an airdrop where they dropped these ENS tokens for anybody who had purchased an ENS name domain and connected it, and if you connected it to your Ethereum wallet, you get extra tokens. You guys probably all know this. The price of ENS tokens promptly went to $80 at its high and then came back down. And I saw a lot of commentary on Twitter at the time saying or I've seen commentary even since being like, holy shit, this is the biggest thing ever. You can own a piece of ENS. This is going to moon. Think about how much bigger this is. It's like owning GoDaddy, and GoDaddy is worth X amount of dollars. And if you'd own shares in GoDaddy, you'd be this rich, on and on and on. And it felt like what was consistently missing in this conversation was that by owning an ENS token, you own a piece of governance. You can vote on proposals for ENS, and you have a certain amount of, therefore you have control over ENS in that way. But you're not entitled to revenue and profit share as a result of this ENS drop, which is substantively different than if you are a shareholder of a company. I think what I'm getting at here is there are two ways you can think about, I would say, ownership. There's ownership where you control a company's decisions, and there's ownership where you have a stake in their profits. And ownership in the private and public markets, separate from Web3, those things tend to go hand in hand, right? You control its decisions and you also receive the financial upside of it. That is not so much the case in Web3 necessarily. You have a lot of these governance tokens where it doesn't necessarily entitle you to profits of the thing. And I sometimes feel like the broader dialogue around it acts like it does. It acts like it's the same as a stock, and it's not, because it quite explicitly can't be, because all of these tokens are trying to say they are not securities. So I was sort of like, if Opensea IPOs, we all get to own a piece of Opensea in a way that I think is more substantive to some extent than just owning tokens from it. Now, this was not a totally fair perspective. This was actually kind of a naive perspective, I think. And I've subsequently talked to folks who are delegates for ENS, right, who are heavily involved in the ENS tokens and the governance. And I think there were some really good points made there. Notably, I talked to Maria Bajwa. I hope I pronounced your last name right, Maria. And she's fantastic. She's been part of the Stoner Cats team. She's super deep in this space, and she is a delegate for ENS. And she was like, look, the piece you're missing here, Carly, is that if Opensea IPOs, the community then has to go out and actively buy a share of Opensea stock to get to participate in it, and that's available to everyone. There's nothing special, rewarding users in particular. And whereas what the community is agitating for here is an airdrop where OpenSea users and participants get something back for their participation. And that's like such an obvious point that it's embarrassing that I kind of missed it. But again, I think I was so triggered by like my ENS flashbacks where I was like, people do not seem to understand that this is not, you're not like a shareholder in this now. So I think that's a really valid point. And I think it's really wonderful that in this space, we hold leaders accountable to their communities. And we say, hey, OpenSea, like, don't you dare forget about us, right? You're the people who have made you successful. And that is something that does not happen in contexts seemingly outside of Web3, right? If like Lyft went public or is public, like Lyft ride users, people who use Lyft, the app, weren't like mad, like, but you owe us. But like they kind of do, right? Like the riders are what made them successful. So you don't have that kind of agitating happening in like the traditional world. And I think it's actually really wonderful that communities have started to demand that companies reward them, the people who made them really successful and big. So it's like this awesome, awesome thing that happens here. I don't know though, and I'm somewhat skeptical that these have to be mutually exclusive in terms of OpenSea IPOing means it can't issue a token to its community. And probably that should happen maybe in reverse order where it issues a token to its community and then IPOs. Because there's definitely a utility token here that could happen that's outside of like a governance or, you know, profit sharing token, which of course isn't really realistic. This was a point Maria made. She's like, you know, I think the utility token element could be really interesting here. She mentioned like super rare. I was looking into the super rare token system. It's really a curation system where if you have these rare tokens, you get to vote on artists that get these like storefronts through the super rare platform. That strikes me as something OpenSea could fully do while still IPOing. And maybe I'm being naive here. Tell me if you know more than me about this, but I don't think an IPO has to mean that there isn't a token and there isn't a community reward system. Those rare tokens from super rare are now trading at like $11 a share, and they were airdropped to users for free, of course. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Everyone is talking about the metaverse these days, and we're all still trying to figure out what it actually is, because everyone is looking for how to get exposure to it. That is why a metaverse index fund is so important, because in such a young market, an index can give you broad exposure to all the various players who are building out all these digital worlds that will ultimately become the metaverse. And that's why you should check out the Metaverse Index from the Index Co-op. The Metaverse Index gives you simple, easy, and safe one-click exposure to the emerging open metaverse trend. The MVI Index contains some of the biggest metaverse projects out there, including Axie Infinity, Decentraland, Illuvium, and more. So join thousands of holders who have already trusted nearly $50 million to the MVI Index. And if you buy $500 of MVI on the Dharma app, you can receive $50 worth of ETH on the Polygon network. There's a link in the show notes for you to click so you can get started on your journey into the metaverse. ONJUNO is your new crypto-enabled financial services company. ONJUNO lets you get your direct deposit paycheck paid to you in crypto. Set up your direct deposit with ONJUNO and receive part of your paycheck in your preferred crypto asset, reducing the time that you're holding on to your inflating dollars. The best thing is ONJUNO sends your crypto directly to your own wallet, whether it's your Ledger, your MetaMask, or however you hold your crypto. ONJUNO can also be a checking account for your crypto, where you manage both your cash and your crypto from one simple account. It's free, and opening up an account with ONJUNO comes with a metal debit card that gives you 5% cash back at select businesses, including Uber, Starbucks, Walmart, Target, and other Web2 companies. Use code BANKLESS when you create your ONJUNO account, and our friends at Juno will airdrop you $50 in ETH when you set up your first crypto paycheck. Sign up at onjuno.com/crypto to get started. That's onjuno.com/crypto.
The other thing I want to say is I want to be wary of thinking that decentralization is always in 100% of cases the right route for a company. I think it's really valid to have companies with centralized decision making, especially in a case of something like OpenSea, where there is like a product development component of this, and you need to be able to make decisions about that quickly and, you know, efficiently. Group decision making is often a very inefficient and sometimes terrible way to go. So I don't want to necessarily penalize OpenSea if they go a different route than an ENS, which strikes me as like a really awesome example of where you should decentralize. I want to say one more thing about decentralization in just a minute, but I want to pause to also say, talking to Maria, I think it's wonderful, Maria, and it strikes me from talking to her that the other people who are delegates for ENS and are really involved in what's happening with ENS are in it because they are passionate about helping to shape the future of what ENS is. They're passionate about the governance component of this. They're not trying to flip these tokens for a lot of money. And to me, if you want to hold on to ENS, that should be a big part of your motivation. You should want to be keeping up to date with what ENS is doing on the governance side, the proposals that are coming up, shaping the future of this. There's no doubt that ENS is a huge, huge thing and a huge property, and I think will only continue to get bigger. And if you want to shape that future from a governance and decision-making perspective, that is the reason, in my opinion, to hold ENS. And I'm heartened to see that I think Maria and a lot of the folks who are big in ENS right now, that is why they're doing this. If you are holding ENS because you want to make a bunch of money in the future, I think it's important that you just get really clear on how the mechanisms by which that might happen, as in ENS tokens mooning, so to speak. I think the argument for it is that the arguments for a lot of NFTs is you're making a bet on social signaling. You're making a bet that as ENS, as Web3 becomes more mainstream and ENS becomes really the social identity layer to all of this, holding ENS tokens has value because you are able to socially signal. I mean, of course, yes, you get to have a say in the direction of it, and that's the first piece we talked about, but you're able to socially signal sort of owning a piece of this in a particular way. And if ENS gets bigger and more mainstream, the tokens will therefore be worth more. That's interesting. That's that's this new world we're in Web3 where it's sort of the meme stock thing. It has value because the brand has value. And so there's cachet in getting to be a part of it rather than it having value because some underlying fundamentals are in terms of revenue or profit are going up. So that's really interesting. The other bet you could be making is that ultimately ENS and the governors of it essentially will decide that there could be payouts to token holders, directly, in the form of ETH payouts or something else. I mean, sort of like what we're talking about with Lazy Lions. So you could be making a bet that might happen. It just can't be explicitly said up front because, again, then you're really bumping up against the limits of securities laws. If ENS came out and said, ENS token holders, governance token holders will also get to, vote for a dividend and they'll be paid a dividend essentially to themselves. That's a security now, and it's a whole different ballgame. So, but those two paths, I think expecting ENS as a brand to go up in value and therefore the social signal capacity of owning ENS going up in value, so the whole thing goes up in value. I think that's one route here, and then the other route is again expecting that there may be a dividend component to this down the line. If you think there's something else I'm missing here about ENS and its value and why people should want to own it if they are really just looking for a surge in price, please let me know. This is something I want to understand a lot better. I think social tokens, governance tokens, they're all huge and a huge part of this ecosystem and are only going to get bigger. And I plan to dive a lot more into this stuff as we continue through this journey. But please let me know what you think on the ENS front. I do think the backlash against Opensea was a little overblown, but I think it's really fantastic for the community to hold these companies accountable and say, hey, we don't forget us. We want to make sure we're benefiting from anything you do in the future as well. What I would really love is if there was a way for OpenSea users to basically cut the line in an IPO, VCs, private investors who can get earlier, better deals. I think our legal infrastructure simply doesn't allow for that properly. But again, I'm probably speaking, I'm getting a little further out from where my understanding of this stuff truly works. But that to me is the ideal, allow OpenSea users to get their hands on these securities before the rest of the market can. That's how I think this should go. Okay, I wanted to make a last note sort of on this question of decentralization. I said I don't think decentralization is in every case the best thing. And I know that there's some purists out there that really chafe at that notion. So I wanted to say an area where I really love the concept of greater decentralization and bordering on full decentralization, and that is with these metaverses. I interviewed Marcus this past week, the marketing director for the Sandbox, and I really do believe that the Sandbox, between my conversation with Marcus, the conversations I've seen with the founders of the Sandbox, like they really want this to be something that is driven by the community, and the community builds what they want in the Sandbox, and then that's what the Sandbox ultimately becomes, as opposed to the executives of the Sandbox being like, we're going to become the gaming metaverse and like we're driving towards that and we're making this decision in a top-down manner. No, they're like, hey, we want y'all to build what you want. We're giving you the tools to build in the Sandbox. Now go build what you want to see here. I think that strikes me as the right strategy and awesome, and like, because your users are then just building what they want. You don't have to do focus groups and be like, what do the people want? It's like, no, they're just going to build it for you, essentially. So I think the metaverse is an example of where we really want it to be user-led, decentralized, user-controlled. Obviously, that's in direct contrast with what we're probably going to see with Meta, which is why I think the broader world, but certainly the Web3 community, is very turned off by the metaverse play, though I continue to say it's brilliant, and I think it is absolutely brilliant. But I that's an example of where I think decentralization has a huge role to play and is very valuable. I sometimes cringe a little bit. I wonder if anybody else has this. When I hear projects be like, well, the community will decide that, right? When you ask a founder or whatever, like what the plan is, and it's like, well, we really just want the community to determine like what we do here. Sometimes I have this feeling where it feels like people like shirking responsibility. Like, I don't know. And sometimes as users or holders of projects that say that, I'm kind of like, well, I don't know. I want you to make this thing a success. Like, I'm busy. Like, I don't have time to make your project a success. I'd like you to do that. So I have these moments sometimes where it feels like saying, hey, the community will decide, feels like sort of a cop-out answer for like, we don't have our own plan, in a way that I can find really uncomfortable. Please let me know if any of you ever feel that way when you hear projects say that. Like, well, it's just like up to the community. Like, okay, well, the community is busy. So can you also have a plan, please? But again, in the case of Decentraland, or I'm sorry, in the case of the Sandbox and these metaverses in general, I do not feel that way. I do think the community should be leading the decisions around that, so long as these metaverse platforms are giving the community the tools to do that building. And in the case of the Sandbox, they have Game Maker and Voxel Edit and all these tools for people to build within the Sandbox. So that's that. The last thing I want to say, I tweeted on Twitter. That's redundant, I suppose. I tweeted recently about the fact that I have a plethora of Gary Vee's latest book. It's called 12 and a half, I think, The Tools for Emotional Success. I don't know, something along those lines. Gary announced several months ago that he was doing something where if you bought 12 of his books, you would get airdropped, or you'd get to claim an NFT he was launching in December of this year. I am a big Gary Vee fan. I think he also is somebody who can be a little eye-rolly to folks, especially like OGs in this space. But I have to say, I think he's an incredibly impressive business person who has a very clear track record of success. I think he's very smart. I think he's very fortunate in the way he's wired, to be honest. And it serves him, the way he's wired serves him very, very well in business. And so I'm a VeeFriends token holder. I minted VeeFriends. They have done very well for me. So I am long on Gary Vee projects because I think he's relentless. I think he's tenacious. I think he's smart. And I think he delivers for his community because his reputation matters so much to him. And for his reputation to do well, he needs to serve the community. So I'm long on him. So I bought a ton of these books so I can get these NFTs that he's airdropping in December. I am offering them out for free. I will mail them to you if you rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Rating and reviewing is not a feature on Spotify, so it's really only something on Apple. It does take a couple days for your review to show up, but we will link to my little spreadsheet or my Google form here. If you want a free Gary Vee book, go fill out this Google form, giving me your address, your name, confirming that you did, in fact, rate this podcast on Apple, review it on Apple, and I will send you a book. I'm also going to do I'm going to sign each of the books, not like in I'm a celebrity way, because that's super lame and I'm very much not, but I'll write a little note in there. Maybe it's a quote I like, maybe it's like a fun little rambling or musing that I have, whatever, right? I'm going to do something along those lines. So yeah, fill out the Google form if you're interested. I'm hoping this Sunday, so I'm recording this on Friday, I'm hoping 2 days from now, I'm going to get a bunch of these sort of signed and starting to get them sent out. I will get them all sent out before the end of December. I have a lot. I have a lot of them to do, and I have a lot of other things going on, but I will get them out to y'all if you're interested in that. And there's a little plug for Gary himself. Great. Thank you all. Thanks so much for listening. As always, rate and review this podcast, right? If you want the book, but also just in general, if you're enjoying it, I hope you are. Please let me know if there's anything you want me to talk more about in a future episode or double down on or do some research on. Let me know what you think about the ENS takes that I had, the Opensea situation, all of the above. I really, really, really appreciate every person who tunes into this podcast. It's honestly such a dream come true for me to get to do this. And so thank you. Thank you for making it possible. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.